I just want to welcome everybody here. My name is Yvonne Watson, and I'm the Executive Dean here at Parsons School of Design. And I am pleased to welcome you along with our esteemed panelists to tonight's discussion. So we are really fortunate to be joined by Willy Chavarria, founder of his namesake label. So I'm sure everybody knows this, but I'm going to say it anyway. So Willy was born in California to an Irish-American mother and a Mexican-American father, growing up in a working-class community of immigrant farmers far from the fashion hub of New York. He pursued graphic design in San Francisco before relocating to New York, where he designed at American Eagle. In 2015, Willy launched his own fashion label, earning critical acclaim for his unique approach to men's fashion. He is celebrated for his commitment to diversity and social activism, using his runway as platforms for political statements and championing inclusive casting long before it became a wider industry practice. We thank you for that. Pulitzer Prize-winning critic Robin Gibbon praised his work in the Washington Post, noting that Willy produces some of the most socially engaging runway shows in New York. In 2021, Willy joined Calvin Klein, an appointment that New York Times highlighted as potentially positioning him as the most prominent Latino on the creative side of American fashion. Yeah, say again. Let's do it. In 2023, his label was recognized with a CFDA award for Menswear Designer of the Year. Willy is nominated again this year, making this his third nomination in this category. So it is my distinct honor to introduce Willy Chavarria and Jessica Weitz from the ACLU. Thank you.
Hello. Hey guys, welcome. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for taking part in tonight, which I think is going to be something very special. We're going to hear from some very amazing people, and I just want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to really participate in this moment and hear from some other voices, and hopefully let their stories and their ideas and their concepts give you some informed information so that we can make intelligent decisions when we go to the ballot box very soon. And I think that there are some very special ideas, some very special stories for us to learn from. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to Jessica with the ACLU.
Thanks so much. And thank you. So, we the people, that only works if it's we participating, right? So that's what tonight is. Tonight is a reminder about why we participate in the little d of democracy. We're all here to just talk from an identity standpoint, who these panelists are, who they are, not necessarily what they do, though you know what they do, but what got them to the place that they could be best in class. So I'm going to bring out our panelists. Come on in. Now they come. So as they come in, our panelists tonight are spectacular. They take orders very well. So everyone here started somewhere, right? They all started with an identity of who they were, they shaped it, they figured it out. But whoever they are right now still is that person in some way. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about the fundamental rights of our civil rights and civil liberties which it all comes down to one thing sometimes, and it's voting. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And very quickly, so for those of you who maybe don't know the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union is the preeminent civil rights and civil liberties organization in this country. We've been around for over 100 years. We work across the waterfront of issue areas. So what that means is from LGBTQ rights, to immigrants' rights, to reproductive freedom, to racial justice, to freedom of speech, and the right to vote. And the last thing I'll say before we ask these questions is that we are nonpartisan. So what that means is we are not talking about who's running or what party they're in or people. We are talking about people. People. Thanks for letting me do that. Welcome, panelists. This is what I would love. I would love for you to introduce yourselves, and I want you to say who you are based on what everybody knows you for, but then I want you to say who you are. Okay, I'm going to start with my colleague at the end, AJ.
I need a microphone.
You're supposed to share it, but
Look at us. Oh, you all are beautiful this evening. I'm so glad to be here. And it's so good. I just want to just take a quick point of personal privilege. There are quite a few ACLUers who are in the room right now, and these are the folks that are working their asses off around the clock, you all, just in general for our civil liberties, but especially to safeguard this election and make sure it's free and fair. And so can you all please just give them a round of applause? My name is AJ Hikes. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the Deputy Executive Director for Strategy and Culture at the ACLU National Office. And to answer your question, Jess, I think people know me as an activist, as an advocate. They remember that in 2017, I added black and brown stripes to the rainbow flag, which is the first time the flag had been updated from the 6-stripe flag that we know. And that was when I was in the Mayor's Office of LGBT Affairs in the city of Philadelphia. And that was to really lift up the experiences of people of color in the LGBTQ community, who are often, the experiences are whitewashed and erased. And so that was a big deal. But who I am a Scorpio, first and foremost, so shout out. Thank you, my friend, thank you, Sue. It's Scorpio season. My partner will say begrudgingly that I'm through and through a Scorpio. I'm also a very loyal friend and partner, and I am a godparent to an incredible 15-year-old non-binary kid, which is really important to me, especially during this time. And I'm an organizer, and outside of my job and career, I'm a person who believes deeply and passionately in our communities and in justice.
hi everybody. I am Sue Bird, she, her pronouns. I'm a Libra, so we're just exiting the Libra season, but happy birthday to us. Yes. I am a retired professional basketball player. I played in the WNBA for the Seattle Storm for 21 years. Storm sweatshirt. It's like, go Liberty, I see that. Olympian, all that good stuff. Like I said, I'm now retired, so I would consider myself an entrepreneur. I've started some media companies, one with my partner Megan over here, who will introduce herself in a second. Yeah, but who am I really? Man, I think I'm just like, so I'm from New York, I'm from Long Island. Sometimes I'm just like a kid from Long Island still figuring it out. Like, I don't know. But one thing I do know is that through my experience as an athlete, the whole like when you see something, say something. So at times I'm still that kid trying to figure it out, who sees things, but now as I've gotten older, I know I gotta say something. So that's how I feel now, and I feel like I found confidence in my voice with that. Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Rapinoe. I'm a former soccer person. All the things, played for a million years. God, who am I? I just feel like bullying and taking people's rights away is bullshit. Like, I just have always, I think I've always kind of had that vibe. My mom, from a very young age, told my twin sister and I, like, just because you guys are good at sports doesn't mean you're shit, basically. Like, you need to do more than just that. And I think that instilled a sense of pride and responsibility in, like, making the world a better place in some sort of way. And we live in a country that values famous people and sports, and so I get valued, and I'm going to use that like a cudgel in every way that I possibly can to protect all of us and, you know, everybody else's rights. So I'm a Cancer, first and foremost, I guess, also second and foremost. So I guess that's the thing that everybody's doing. And thrilled to be here. Willy, thanks for having us in the ACLU, for protecting us all the time.
Hi everyone, I am so honored to be here. My name is Phillip Lim. I am the creative director and co-founder of 31 Phillip Lim, a fashion brand born in New York. I'm a Virgo. I'm very nervous too. Like, I'm very nervous because we're here to talk about something important to all of us, and I'm here as not only someone who champions human rights, but also someone here to just share stories and learn from each other in this wonderful panel. And hopefully what we leave with here today is to be re-energized and understand that we have the power.
I am Willy, and I am best known for having a fashion brand that has always taken a position on human dignity and social justice issues and the rights of all of us. And I put that at the forefront as the foundation of my work, and then the fashion follows that. So I think that's what I'm known for. I hope you guys know about it. I'm a Cancer. I love to eat food. I'm a husband. I'm a son, I'm a godfather, I'm a friend. I think I am somebody who every day wants to do what's best for each other. And I really think that I have my family to thank for that, because I was raised of an immigrant family in a Mexican farm working community where there was no fashion. I'm sorry. Actually, he didn't have any fashion growing up either. But there was no fashion, there was no glamour, there was no real concept of like luxury or the type of futures that so many of us in this room really, look to have. And I think that really grounded me. And in the farming, being with the farm working community, Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, who led the United Farm Workers Movement, were so important to us. Their photos were on like our living room wall. And the idea of having, the idea of respecting one another and giving each other the dignity that we deserve was always imperative to my being. So as I got older and then got into fashion, I decided to make that my way. So I'm glad that you're all here. I'm really glad to be here with the ACLU. These guys are at the front lines 24/7, working their asses off to protect our rights. And I do want to say, as we get started, that they're protecting us, and we can help them by donating a little bit, as much as you possibly can. There's a QR code that you can scan somewhere. And then we're also selling some really cool Willy Chavarria merchandise that goes to help the ACLU. Yes, we have sweatshirts and we have t-shirts. There you go. So please, knock yourselves out.
And now you know why we're all so excited for this conversation. I'm Cancer, by the way, so you know where we all sit. you know, Willy, you said it in your introduction and the dean brought it up. Your clothes are gender fluid and so indicative of who you are, who you were when you grew up, and who you are today. Your runway shows, it's America. Why is it important for people who are not LGBTQ, who are not immigrants, to care as much about this?
I think we know, based on studies and based on like just regular life, that the more diversity we have in the room or at the table or in the conversation, the better the creativity, the better the outcome of a decision, the better the planning or the problem solving, or just, the better the outcome of what is created for all of us. And I think without that inclusion and without that real love for our neighbors, we miss out on that. And to make for a better society, we have got to allow everyone a seat at the table, and we really can't deny anyone a seat. And when we do deny people, it's not only horrible for those people, but it's detrimental to the society as a whole.
Have you had pushback within your industry?
Me personally? Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I think people who are, it depends, on the issue. I mean, of course, I've suffered homophobia in instances, and definitely racism in many instances. But something that I've done in that is I've learned to accept that working harder or doing more to get my point across just makes me better. And I say this because it's important not to be resentful of the fact that we have to work harder. It's just a fact. And if you become resentful of it, there's an ugliness that it brings to you that we don't want. So it's something to kind of embrace as like a challenge that we're gifted with that actually makes us stronger, more interesting, cooler people than people who don't have to struggle that way.
Definitely cooler. Phillip? So like Willy, you're a son of immigrants. You were raised here in the US, but can you talk about what it meant for you to grow up as the child of immigrants?
God, do we have 2 years?
We start real slow here.
Yeah, I'm still figuring that out, if I can be very honest with you. America is all I know because I was brought here at the age of 2. Immigrant parents, classic immigrant story. I'm Chinese descent. My family lived in Cambodia and Thailand for a while, and then they actually escaped the genocide of Cambodia. And they brought over 6 children here to the States to settle. So growing up, I grew up straddling this line of East and West constantly. When you come home, shoes off, and you speak Chinese. And when you leave the front door, you play tennis, or you try to get a varsity jacket, or whatever it is, right? And I grew up that way. But as I grew older, I realized growing up and what it means to be an American, or even being asked that constantly, it's extra weight. And as Willy mentioned, we have to accept the fact that, we have to work harder to prove that. We have to possess more grit. Just as is, we have to be more patient. And all our decisions are scrutinized more because it takes extra layers and barriers to be pushed down or pushed through to get into the room and have a seat at the table. So that's why it's like so important what Willy said, that when we're there, we have to make room for others too. But I also feel that I've taken what it is to be American for granted too. because life is pretty good here. If you have the chance to travel to other countries, it's pretty amazing, this country. Because in this country, we share this idea of the American dream and the American values. It is an experiment. It's not guaranteed, but it's an experiment. And no other country in this world has this experiment or believes in this. So what it means to grow up as an American is sitting in front of you guys, having the privilege to sit with my co-panelists here to speak about the right to vote, the right for us to have the ability on our will to pursue life, liberty, and love for all. And to me, that is something that we should not take for granted. And wherever you come from, we can all get to the same place as long as we don't take it for granted.
Before you pass the mic, you did something really extraordinary in a really deplorable time. Phillip created the hashtag Stop Asian Hate. Sure, with other people. I saw that face.
Don't come after me. It takes a village.
It does take a village, right? But that was a lot of pressure on shoulders of people who are already hurting very much. What made you do that in that moment?
I'm still processing it. In that moment, we just had to act and put everything aside, and we just had to act, because in that moment we were seeing innocent lives, innocent people that look like my parents, my brothers, my sisters, my friends being violently assaulted and scapegoated for a virus that is health and human, not based on race and ethnicity. I'm a fashion designer by trade, and I try to do my best to be informed and just be a good person. And it kind of ladders back to that first question. I take it for granted, the rights of as an American, as an Asian American. Never would I ever imagine that in 2020, 21, that blame would be casted on a community that was also going through this health and human virus. So in that moment, we were called to action. And it was about galvanizing. It was about speaking up. It was about using your platforms. It was about not worrying. One of my biggest concerns was, I'm not an activist, so what can I do? I just make dresses. I make jackets. I try to bring beauty into the world. But part of beauty is also to push back on the ugly. You know what I mean? That's the fight. And for me, it was day and night of just getting on text, on phone calls, on emails to just rally, not only from your own community, but also allies. Just sharing your stories and realizing that you don't have to be an activist, you just have to be activated to ensure that not only are you fighting for your own rights and dignity, but for people who look like you and for people who do not look like you, who do not love like you. You know what I mean? We're all in this together. And what we did in 2 weeks, through just texts, phone call, reaching out, getting on Zooms, and I think that it was like that different types of platforms. We created Stop Asian Hate Community Fund on GoFundMe. First ever AAPI Community Fund. We raised over $7 million. And to this
Let them
day,
applaud that.
it was a platform that united a community where we could all trust that we could go to find information, to learn about what was happening to each other, to donate, to also fundraise. And to this day, it's still funding grassroots organizations that do the work every single day all across the nation to fight hate, push back on injustice, and uplift people and communities of color. And so that was something that I had the privilege to experience. And when you experience something like that, you realize what's at stake, but you also realize your potential. Again, I'm just a fashion designer, but I have the potential to action and make sure that I do everything in my power to ensure that we all have rights.
I want us to kind of put a pin in that activated versus activist. Maybe we'll come back to that. Megan. So I, in my life, can't even remember a time of knowing who you were and not knowing who you were. You were out, you were proud, you were fighting for your rights, you were fighting for other people's rights, you were fighting for pay equity when nobody else was speaking up for that. And not alone, but sometimes alone.
Never alone. Never alone.
Never alone. So is there a moment in time that you can look back now and say, I wish I did that differently. I wish I said something else and maybe that would have made this easier.
Well, I wish I would have known I was gay when I was like 0. That was super obvious once I figured it out at 19 or 20, whatever it was. I was like, oh my God, what the fuck? Like literally looking at my family like, is anybody gonna say anything? Like, fuck. I don't really have moments where I feel like, I certainly can like word things better and maybe pick a better time or inform people in advance of what I'm about to do that affects a lot of other people. That's definitely happened a number of times. But I think for me, in terms of speaking out or the activated or the activism part, it's all stuff I either am or I deeply believe in or people have told me and I'm being a mouthpiece for them, being an ally. And I don't think you can really get that wrong. To me, it's like most of the stuff that I have spoke out about is either like human rights or something that is fair or an injustice that's so obvious. And I think just naturally I have that confidence to be able to do that. Similar to what you're saying, there's always people behind. There's always a huge team of people that help me. And for whatever reason, I'm in the position that I'm in and feel comfortable speaking out about that. And I do feel a real sense of pride and responsibility, but pride mostly in being able to speak out. I think it makes it easier for other people. It really does. And there's certain people in society that have certain skills or talents or are positioned in a certain way that can, I think, amplify a message, that are more protected. I feel that about myself, particularly in kneeling with Colin. Like I was getting death threats, but I'm like, am I really? Like I'm a white woman in America. I play sports. I have like security at the time. So it wasn't as dangerous for me as it is for people just being black in America and using that privilege against inequality, I think is something that I learned pretty early on. I said earlier, using it like a cudgel, and I really mean that. And I played for America, so I was like, oh, I am American too, whether you like it or not. And I think I learned that like little tool. And I think it made it a lot easier for me, and I think a lot more impactful for me in being able to speak out. And I didn't always, say everything perfectly, but I felt like the essence of it was there, and I was either speaking on behalf of myself and something I really believe in, and so the words were a lot of times just there, or I was speaking on behalf of other people and I was listening and making sure that they were okay with what I was saying. That was always sort of my judge. Not who really I was speaking to, but who was, I was speaking on behalf of or with, and I feel like that was always my North Star. Of course, who I was speaking to, they didn't want to hear any of that. They were like, this is crazy. Don't talk about racism. Don't talk about homophobia. Don't talk about being gay. Don't talk about equal pay. Don't talk about being a woman. Don't talk about any of that.
So you were mute, you're saying? For the...
Yeah. But, of course, if I was, using that as a judge of whether I would say something or not, I would never speak at all. But I think having that community and the people behind me and knowing I was doing right by them and myself and, the various communities gave me a lot of confidence to be bold and to say those things and to activate around issues that I just feel like are really obvious. So I never want to lose that point of like, it's a human right. Like I'm living in the world as a, as a woman, as a gay person, as a white person, like these things are interacting with us all the time. I'm just going to speak plainly to it.
You said how, like, it's just like facts, like, it seems so silly that you have to fight for things that seem so obvious, right? I want to believe that when all of you speak out, that there is a net positive from that, right? Like the runoff of you speaking up maybe inspires somebody else to speak up. Maybe they can help lead the path for someone else. Whether it was your teammates, your fans, people in your family maybe that you don't always speak to, because sometimes we can't always speak to people in our families. I don't know what I'm talking about. What were some of the great stories? What was somebody who came to you and said, you did that, made me want to do this?
Well, I feel like I've successfully radicalized my mom. I always knew she was with it. And I'm like, are you sure that's anything? I think my mom is a big one, particularly around race conversations and me kneeling with Colin. I think first and foremost she was just afraid and just scared, and people were saying the craziest things. But I think what was really interesting for her was, and she's retired now, but she worked in service. She was a waitress for 30 years or something. And so she was the interface to basically me, because customers were coming in from a really small town in Northern California. It's generally quite right-leaning. And so she was having to deal with people coming in and saying, I'm an awful person because I knelt with Colin. And she's like, you don't even know her. And also, this is what's happening. And so I feel like she had this like secondhand taste of inequality in a way, and of bullshit, and just how fake the arguments were, how kind of like fake the outrage was. And what people were really saying is, we don't want Black people to have all the rights. And I think that was something I'm really proud of, and proud of her for that, of being open-minded even at her older age. I get women all the time that either, write or come up to me and just say, I asked my boss for a raise because you guys did. And just having that confidence and having almost a playbook, and like, I'm not alone. I think so many people, particularly around equal pay, just feel it's crazy making, because there's such a lack of transparency, and it's hard, and especially if you're a woman and you're elite, you're usually the only one, or one of very few. And so I think our message was able to resonate in that way. I see so many little queer kids and families, and the parents or the kids, or it's such a dynamic thing, and it really always has been from the time that I came out. It's certainly more now, and you're starting to see that more now. I don't have pink hair right now, but so much pink hair and so much purple hair, and so many parents showing up and supporting their young kids who are like very clearly queer and figuring it out, and like wearing all kinds of crazy stuff and dyeing their hair, and just to see, not only the kids being able to be themselves, but to see their parents' support. And my mom and my dad are really supportive, but I think they did go through this period where there's like, this isn't what we expected. And I was like, well, that's first of all fucking crazy. You knew this was coming for a very long time. We can get back in the photos. to just see the openness and to have the parents, you know, either like whisper on the side or something of like, my kid loves you, or like, you're the reason I was okay with this, or people just saying like, you're the reason I came out or whatever. Those are always incredibly meaningful. And to your point about the waterfall or the trickle down or the kind of effects of speaking out. I mean, I just know as a kid, I didn't have there was nobody that was looking like me when I was a kid, or nobody that was playing soccer that was really like looking the way that I was feeling. And so to have that, to see that something exists, not only can you see it, be it, but also it's just like you're not alone. And there's like, oh, I am normal. I am beautiful the way that I am okay in so many ways. So there's a million little stories like that.
And you have community. And
Very
I don't know
much.
if you noticed, but your panelists were nodding their heads for most of what you said.
Y'all know.
Sue, like Megan, you use your powers for good on the field and off the field. I loved your documentary, In the Clutch. I loved how you said, well, why do I have to come out? Like, everybody knows I'm out. Like, all right, fine, I'll come out for you people, but like, why? So what was your like lightning spark of like, fine, I'll do that now?
Come out. So yeah, the quick backstory on that is I was basically out to everyone in my world, friends, family, by the time I was, let's call it 23, 24. But as a public figure, I wasn't publicly out. I hadn't said it in the media. And I think at the time, I was like, but I'm living my life. Like, why do I have to do that? And then I met Megan, who's been gay since she was 0, apparently. So it was kind of like,
you saw the photos.
Yeah. It's like, well, I kind of, no, but it was actually in meeting Megan, getting to know Megan, talking to Megan. You were obviously very influential in that moment for really to get me to understand the power that it would have, and that it wasn't going to be really about me. It wasn't going to be about me. And I think in the moment, my nature is a little bit more introverted. I'm like this introvert extrovert. It's very confusing, but a little bit more shy, a little bit more reserved. It's actually how I played the game of basketball, so it's like it's not that different. Setting up my teammates, making sure everybody else is in the front. And to me, in this weird way, coming out was saying, hey, look at me. Hey, look at this thing over here that's doing this thing. And I wasn't comfortable with that, like deep down. But then in conversation with Megan and other people, realizing that coming out actually wasn't going to be about me, and it was going to be about helping other people the way Megan helped me. And then I was like, oh my God, I have to do this. And that small little reframe for me changed everything on how I've used my voice. Because the truth is, I feel like a lot of people, it can be intimidating. It could be nerve-wracking. It can be scary to speak out. But for me, when I think about who I'm doing it for and it's not me, I'm like, okay, where's the mic? Like, hand it over.
Introvert, extrovert, I see you.
Yeah.
Are you sure you're not a Cancer?
I'm like, do I want to go out tonight? I don't. I want to sit on the couch, but it's a lot.
Totally. You and Megan both brought something up, which is, you're speaking out on behalf of women, on behalf of LGBTQ people. And also, you were front and center for Black Lives Matter. I hear sometimes, we might all hear sometimes, like, well, I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I'm going to say nothing, because it's them, it's not me. So talk to us about what good allyship looks like, how to get over that fear.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, well, again, just a little bit of a backstory. It was like, obviously, I play sports, so I'm a woman in sports, so I've experienced like the sexism piece. I'm a gay woman in sports, so I've experienced the homophobia piece of it. But I play a sport that is predominantly Black, predominantly women of color. So I have seen through, obviously my own eyes, but from a very young age, that experience as well. And so my first, I guess, piece of advice is to listen, to ask questions, and to believe, right? When somebody's telling you their human being experience, like, listen to that, believe that. I think developing relationships, for me, in a sense, it was somewhat lucky because teammates just naturally become friends and family. So when you develop the relationships, you do have the ability to ask questions that might be scary to ask publicly. But I think when you foster those relationships and somebody knows that you're coming from a trustworthy place, you can ask questions. You can try to understand even more, even deeply. And then again, I think part of that is educating yourself on your own. That's a big piece of it too. And then for me, how my allyship, I guess, took form was, even though I just did this whole introvert, extrovert, I don't like to be front and center, I do thrive in a leadership role. I have no problem leading a team. I'm the point guard, like, follow me, we'll do this. But what I learned very quickly in my allyship was that wasn't always gonna be helpful. And there were times where I was gonna have to follow or support or just do nothing, just be there, literally just be there. But then I also, again, through my relationships, through conversations, I also was like, oh, there are times where I'm needed to lead. And the one, I guess, example or story that comes to mind was during, I can make it very brief, it was during the 2020, what we affectionately call the wubble season, WNBA in a bubble, you get it. We were in Florida, of all places, for literally 3 months, locked in, the whole thing, playing these games. But there was a lot of, we were there for social activism, and there was just, obviously, 2020, I don't have to say it, there was a lot happening. And there were moments where my black peers, my black teammates, players on the other team, or within the executive committee, which is where, like, we represent the union, they just couldn't do it. It was too much, emotionally exhausted, scared, it was too much. And that was when, as a leader, that was where my allyship could take that form. So it really was about finding that balance. So all the things I said, and then finding that balance between when to lead, when to follow, but a lot of that is based on trust and relationships.
Thanks so much. So speaking of net positives, I don't know anybody more optimistic than you, AJ Heights. It's still kind of mind-blowing that there wasn't a flag that had all the colors in it, right? So what was that net positive, or not? But what was the response from Philadelphians when you instituted this? Gay or straight?
Yeah. Well, maybe just because we're in New York, it's a different audience, I would take us a step back to tell a little bit of the story about how the flag came to be.
Please.
I wasn't like sitting on the couch like, this would be a good idea. Let me just throw some stripes on a flag. So in Philadelphia, this was 2017, there was actually a conversation that was going on about racism within the LGBTQ community. And I want to be very clear when I talk about this. It's not that Philadelphia is this rare city that had these like pops of racism, and so we decided to address it. As queer folks, and those of us queer folks of color know this, and also our allies, that this is a reality across the country, across the world. And so in all of our neighborhoods and beyond, from West Village to West Hollywood, and from Boys Town in Chicago to Buckhead in Atlanta, like all over the place, you see this. And so what we were talking about in Philadelphia was discrimination in bars and restaurants, places of public accommodation, a lack of leadership in our LGBTQ organizations. So you're serving the community, but you don't look like the community, right? And enough was enough. And the real smoking gun was that there was a bar owner who was caught on video in a racist rant, and he was saying the N-word over and over again. And I want to be very clear that this was not some like troll on social media. This was a leader in community, and he was caught saying the N-word. It was actually to a black person who was a bartender in this restaurant. And so that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And so there were protests, there were boycotts, there were calls for resignations. And I was leading the mayor's office of LGBT affairs, and in addition to the policy and the legislation that we put forth around anti-discrimination, we've been having this conversation for decades. And I said, we need a symbol to actually mark this time and also mark this experience that LGBTQ folks of color have been jumping up and down and screaming about for ages. And so what's complicated for me about the flag is it's a thing that everybody remembers. It became a global symbol, but we also were doing all this like real substantive work for community. But the symbol, this symbol, it's a real symbol, literal symbol of intersectionality, is a thing that folks remember. And so created this symbol, and I wanted it to be a Philadelphia thing. I actually had no idea that it was going to go anywhere beyond Philadelphia. So we raised it on a Thursday, I remember, with like drag queens and glitter and we are family and the whole thing, baby, we had a time. And so we raised it, and it was a wonderful celebration because everybody in Philadelphia had the context. And it went immediately viral, like immediately viral. I think like Breitbart picked it up first, which of course they did. Of course they did. So I'm like, why the hell does Steve Bannon have my name in his mouth? But here we are. And so it went immediately viral. And what was really challenging about it is that in Philadelphia, folks were rejoicing. And folks of color, LGBT community folks were saying, thank you so much. I see myself in this. I feel so affirmed by this. But there was also a tremendous backlash. And so it breaks my heart that my fellow panelists have also talked about death threats and hate mail. And I was absolutely swarmed with it, just swarmed with it. And it came from around the world because the flag went viral and it went internationally viral immediately. But here's the thing about it. People assume that when I talk about hate mail and death threats, I'm talking about homophobes, transphobes, racists, and racist I am. But the other things, not so much. It actually was coming from inside the community. The call was coming from inside the house, y'all. And I know this because the folks would state that in their horrific emails and voicemails and horrible comments, would say, as a gay white man, how fucking dare you? You've hijacked our community. You Black Lives Matter in words, think that it was awful. And you still see it sometimes because the flag has been adapted and some of you all seen the comments. But what was interesting about that is one, child, you're making the point right now. Like it's in the name, right? You're making the point. This is the thing. But it also encouraged folks to be real incredible allies, to double down. And I really appreciate what Sue said because I was deeply kind of destroyed by this. One, because we didn't have a media plan, I had prepared for it, I'm an office of one, and all this is happening. But for it to be coming from my own community was very challenging. And so to have white folks, and I'll be honest, it was white women first, they stepped up and was like, I'll take this one, I'll get it. Thank you, do that labor, get in there. That was incredibly important. But I'm grateful. Now, like you said, it's wild. People look and they're like, why didn't we always have this? And so it went immediately from being this Philadelphia thing to a global phenomenon that has been adapted and adopted so many times, and that's just been a beautiful thing.
Just take it in, you all. Just take it in. So yeah, right. There's this election thing happening soon. We know it, we feel it.
First I'm hearing it.
Newsflash, Breitbart says. It's an inflection point, though. It's an opportunity for us to look in and to look out. It's an opportunity for us to say, my people are at risk. It's an opportunity to say, your people are at risk. So what would all of you say to people in the room who identify as LGBTQ+, identify as immigrants, identify as people who might need an abortion one day, and the people who don't? What do you say to them at this moment?
I'll get started. I'm really interested in what everyone else has to say. You know, I think I'll start with the folks who don't identify as any of these things. And they don't, frankly, let's just call it, they have the privilege to not have any skin in the game. That's just what we're talking about, because folks that don't hold those identities are not, the same things are not on the line, are not at stake for them. And so what I would actually ask, and this is, again, being inspired by what Sue and Megan had said, is I really look to white folks. I'm just going to be like, my ACLUers will tell you I'm known for being very direct. I look to white folks to lean into your allyship in these ways. Like, the messenger matters. They're going to hear it from you better than they're going to hear it from me. Like, truly. Do like Megan did with her mama. Like, get your people together, please. We were having this conversation just in the green room with everybody, and there's a conversation about, are black men leaving the Democratic Party, and da-da-da-da-da. I want to remind folks that black women are the most loyal voting bloc the Democratic Party has ever had, and in terms of like beyond parties, in terms of civil liberties and civil rights, Black men are the second most loyal. Child, everybody else comes after that. And so there's an opportunity to get your folks together. And so I want to implore folks to continue having conversations, but make it personal. The personal is the personal is political, the political is personal. Tell your stories about yourself and what's at stake for you in this election. Tell your stories about your teammates, about your colleagues, about your friends, about your loved ones. Make it personal, please, because we say all the time, like, truly vote like your rights depend on it, because they do. This is the most consequential election of our time. I know we say it all the time, but it is truly, truly the case. For some of us, this is the fight of our lives, and it's the fight for our lives. So please, speak with that kind of weight when you're talking to your folks.
I think for me, first, if I spoke to those who are members of all the communities that are being attacked and where their rights are on the line, so the members of those communities, man, take care of yourself. Like, mental health, like, take time for yourself, like, do all that you can and do, like, fight the good fight, but then make sure you're, like, filling that cup back up. You gotta re-energize in order to get back out. So that's basically what I would say there. I think for everybody else, not so different from what Willy was saying earlier, society is better when we're all able to thrive. Every group of person. Society is simply better. I always put it back in, because I do think the struggle makes you more interesting, but I always put it back in basketball terms, so just work with me here. I'm a 5'9" point guard. Like, I had a skill set for sure. It got me very far. But, you know, you look around, basketball is not dominated by people my height. It's just not. And so even though if you look at my career, it's arguably like one of the tippy tops. Like, I'm not gonna name it, but I've won a ton, like 5 gold medals, like 4 WNBA championships.
But she's not gonna name it, so don't ask.
Yeah, I don't wanna take up the thunder. It's like this amazing career. If you had 5 of me out there on the basketball court, we'd be trash. It'd be the worst team you ever have seen. I'm not joking, because you need the different, in my world, the different skill sets, the different sizes, the different shapes, the different speeds. You need it all. That's what makes great teams, right? That's what makes great societies. And so while you might not think it impacts you, it does, because it's going to impact your world in some way, shape, or form, because it's not going to be the best version of that world. Really what you guys, we both said. I mean, I would just, challenge, of course there are certain people that are really on the line. Their rights are really on the line. Trans folks, gay folks, women, young trans kids, of course. But, I'm gonna butcher this, I think it's Emma Lazarus, but none of us are free until all of us are free. Like, we are not free if we're all not free. That is not a free society. That is not the ideals of this country. And so in whatever way you need to connect to it, yes, some people's literal human rights are on the line, but nobody has free healthcare in this country. And I don't know, milk is going up in price, right? Like something like that. Like, this does affect everybody. This election is going to affect everybody. The health of all of us affects your individual health, from a mental health standpoint, from a physical health standpoint, from a safety standpoint. All of us are interconnected because we're social beings and we live in a society and we all depend on everyone in order for this society and this project and this dream to work. So talk to your family and your friends and whoever it is like that. Connect the dots for them. We actually just had an amazing conversation with Stacey Abrams, who's like literally the smartest person ever. Just like, and speaks so plainly and so direct to things, but she was explaining DEI, the rollback of DEI, and how it's connected to trans kids being excluded from sports, and it's really the right to an opportunity that we're after. And that's what diversity and equity and inclusion means is the right to exist and have the same opportunity that everyone else has. And I think everyone in this country, no matter, you know, your race, your gender, your sexuality, any of that, everybody wants that and everybody deserves that. And so that's how I would try to, you know, talk to maybe the people who are not going to vote. And to what you said earlier, it is a privilege to live here. And sometimes it's crazy, obviously, but not everywhere in the world is it just a given that you get to vote and that you get to come to something like this and that you get to speak your mind. And that part takes effort, and it takes your participation. It takes everybody showing up in democracy. This is how it works. We have to vote, and then that's how things get done. Nothing's gonna get done, or change, or be different, or have our voices heard if we don't vote. So that's what I would say, and oh my God, vote like your life depends on it, because it does.
You guys have said it so eloquently and profoundly. You know, it's really that. Let's not take it for granted. I used to feel so uncomfortable when people would say to me, "You're a role model." I'm like, "What am I a role model of?" You know, I'm just trying to figure out myself. But everything starts with just our own actions, and it's a ripple effect. No matter who you are, wherever you are in your life, or how down you may feel about yourself or hopeless, someone's looking at you. Someone younger, less privileged, less liberties. Someone near, someone far. So you are a role model also. So it is incumbent upon ourselves, each and every one of us, to just act. Just show up and get there. You know what I mean? You don't have to know it all, but know that in this moment you have the gift, the privilege, the power to affect. You're a role model. This country is a role model for the world. And how we act and what we will do in the next 12 days, it will influence the world. So let's do it.
Woo. I love what you're saying, Phillip, and it's true. It's funny. I was raised in a very Chicano family, so being like pro-America was never my vibe. And you know, I have to say, just probably within the last couple of years, I've really, really come to value the fact that we do live in a democracy that so many other people do not have the privilege to have such incredible rights that we have, and that, you know, these rights have been fought for by people before us. People have died for the right to the rights that we have. So I just think that that complacency is something that we cannot let ourselves have. Even if we haven't lived in a time where there's been a war, or there's been a Great Depression, or, you know, even if we haven't experienced those things in our own lives, those things do exist. And democracy, it may not sound like a very big deal because we hear about it all the time, but it is incredibly fragile. And we can actually lose it if we don't do something to defend it. So we do have the ACLU working constantly for us, but we all have a part in this game. And you know, Megan, you're talking about speaking to, you know, your friends and your family, and that's so important. And it's also so important to speak to your friends and your family as friends and as family, because there's so much, you know, hate and divisiveness in the air, even in my own family. There are, you know, people thinking crazy thoughts. And I just, you know, I don't always, it's good that this is a nonpartisan, you know, conversation, because it's best to talk about these things from a nonpartisan point of view, because ultimately it's our rights, it's our existence, it's our right to be here and live and eat in the same restaurant as our friends or love the people that we love. So it's so incredible that we live in a place where what we do can actually affect our future and the future of our children, our brothers and sisters. And it's just so important for us to take action. So it's also important for us to encourage everyone around us to take action. And thank you.
Just so we're abundantly clear here, actually on two things. One, you can totally have my job. You are so much better at it. You are killing it for us, Willy.
Your job is terrifying.
So is yours.
That's true.
But we also wouldn't be here tonight without you. This was your idea. This was your brainchild that came from here, but really came from here. You brought us together. You are a leader, and all of you are leaders. And all of you don't need this microphone to be a leader. Like, you have your own microphone. Remarkable. I'm gonna ask AJ to do the thing that you asked, which is, what can people do who are not all of you amazing people?
I have a few things. Well, the first is that right now, we are at the Supreme Court, and we are going to be challenging one of the 25 bans against evidence-based healthcare for trans young people. The Supreme Court is taking this case up, and our own Chase Strangio is going to be the very first trans attorney to argue a case before the Supreme Court. Huge. And that happens December 4th. And what the court is deciding, frankly, is if it's constitutional to discriminate against trans people. That's literally what we're talking about. They can decide that it's okay to discriminate against trans people because of the health care that they need. Just because they don't like the kind of health care that trans people need. And I want to be very clear that it's not just health care for trans adolescents that we're talking about. It's health care for all of us, for absolutely everyone. Because understand, if they decide that they can discriminate against trans people and decide what kind of health care trans young people can have, they can decide what kind of health care you can have. Because spoiler alert, they've already started doing that. That's what happened in 2022 when Dobbs came down and Roe fell. So this, truly, we are not overstating it when we say that this impacts all of us. This impacts all of us. It is a deeply intersectional issue when we're talking about bodily autonomy. And so, unsurprisingly, we will be at the Supreme Court. We will be on the steps of the Supreme Court, rallying our asses off.
So please join us.
So please join
it's
us.
a lot of steps.
Please, it's a lot of steps. Please join us on December 4th. And the other thing that I want to make sure that we know is that I want us to listen to and think about all the rhetoric that we have here. Willy was just talking about the hateful rhetoric. There's homophobic, transphobic, racist rhetoric that's out there. And I want us to think about how we can combat that. Specifically when we're talking about trans folks in this case, how we can lift up stories of humanity to combat all the dehumanization that's happening for trans folks. Share those stories, tell those stories, elevate the stories that are being told on other platforms. We have to be able to combat this. And of course, final thing you can do is pledge to vote, make a plan to vote. I'm not kidding y'all, we were literally talking about our plans to vote back in the green room, dead ass. We were like keeping each other accountable when we're gonna do it, when we're mailing in, who's getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to stand in a line. Do that with your friends too. Make a pledge to vote, make a plan to vote, talk with your folks about how you're doing it. I think there are QR codes. Oh, look at that, fancy. Make sure you scan that and be able to take action and do the same thing with your friends and your loved ones. Vote like your rights depend on it, because they do.
Thank you everyone for coming out. I get to call friends and colleagues at the ACLU, Cindy Tsai and Justin Kipp and Ariel Sims and Megan Hoffman and everybody else, Hannah Stolzer, who's getting everybody social. You're going to see yourself later. Just thank you, all of you. And thank you to the Purple team and the Willy team. I mean, Carolyn and Kathy and Andrew and Fernando and Devante and everyone that brought all of this together and your teams. Like, none of this happens alone. We're not alone. Let's not be alone. Let's vote. Thank you. Thank you, AJ. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Phillip. Thank you,